In episode 2, Yennefer and Fringilla are taken prisoner by elves, specifically the former elf king, Filavandrel. They're taken in the middle of the woods where they see a structure that looks a lot like a structure you would see in Artusa. They're then escorted into a tent where they meet the new person in charge. It's an elven mage by the name of Francesca. But she's not too happy to see Yennefer and Fringilla. In fact, she's pissed off at Filavandrel for even bringing them. He figures they could be hostages, but she says, why don't you just kill them in the first place? I have no use for them. Yennefer speaks up, actually saying that she is part elf, and this isn't how you treat your own people. But Francesca takes offense to that because Yennefer doesn't have elven ears, and she doesn't buy the fact that Yennefer could possibly be elf. Francesca then instructs Filavandrel to hang them, and he points out, we've been digging here for weeks. Eventually, we're going to get caught. Francesca, however, reminds him that he no longer leads the elves. And then asks him, has the white robe visited your dreams too? And to that, the answer is no. But that comment by Francesca about the man in the white robe piques the interest of Yennefer, because Yennefer has been visited by somebody in a red robe in her dreams. So when both Yennefer and Fringilla are taken outside and chained up to a tree, Yennefer asks Fringilla if she's had any nightmares regarding robed people, and Fringilla says yeah, but the person in my dream is wearing a black robe. Yennefer points out that shared dreams are a powerful omen, which is something they could use to their advantage. Now, they just need to get to Francesca. They also mention how they were told back in Artusa that elven mages weren't a thing, but they chalk it up to another lie by Tissaia. They figure, though, the easiest way to get to Francesca is through Filavandrel. And Filavandrel is busy in the moment, talking a few feet away to Francesca and a few other people in charge. Everyone's pretty concerned because they haven't had success in the woods, people are getting hungry, spirits are kind of running low, and Filavandrel says maybe the others in Temeria or Ardania are having better success. But Francesca shoots back that they're the same elves that lick the boots of humans, and they'll get their necks crushed by their boots. Filavandrel says, you promised us Dol Pathana. How long are we going to search? And Francesca tells all of them, we cannot lose faith. I know that these ruins will bear answers. The visions I've had since entering these woods are proof. She tells them that the white robe in her dreams has hidden her face, but she knows that it's the ancient prophet Ithilien. Filavandrel then gets up and walks out of the conversation, and at this point, he's within earshot of Yennefer and Fringilla. They start stroking his ego, asking, are you the Filavandrel from the Bard's songs? And he plays it off like it's no big deal, but he confirms, yeah, I am. They ask him, though, what happened? You were the Elf King. And he tells them that the elves had turned to Francesca after he failed to defeat Calanthe. Yennefer then tells them that they've also dreamt of robed figures, and if they're free, they could work together to figure out the meaning. But that's when you hear an elf in the background scream, we found something! A little while later, both Fringilla and Yennefer are scooped up and escorted into the ruins, and that's when they see what the elves found. It's an entryway. They're looking at all of these ancient hieroglyphics from the elves of the past. But at the end of it, they see Francesca. Francesca asks them about their dreams, and they tell her, this is a two-way street. You tell us about yours. And in Francesca's dream, there's dead bodies all over the place, but they're dead bodies of elves. It's Ithilien that grabs her and guides her to a new elven kingdom. Fringilla tells the group that the person in her dream is not Ithilien, it's Emhyr. He had just returned to Nilfgaard, he killed a usurper, and he saves her life. But when it comes time for Yennefer to tell about her visions, she doesn't. She walks up to the altar, moves some dust around, and it reveals that there's an elven language carved into the altar. She reads it aloud. Behold the mother of forests, the deathless mother nesting in dreams. There's also something on there about a hut with no doors. As they're trying to make sense of it all, the altar starts shaking. It moves backwards, and it reveals that there's a staircase leading down below. So all three women grab some torches and follow it. As they're walking down, both Yennefer and Fringilla kind of fall back. And Yennefer starts asking Fringilla about her dreams, because when Fringilla woke up, she seemed terrified. So she asks her if it's Emhyr who's supposed to protect her, why was she so scared? Fringilla explains that in the dream, she wakes up, and there's a bunch of people surrounding her, touching her. She can't see them, and she also can't stop it. She goes on to explain that after the usurper executed Fergus, he had all the mages moved to a prison called the Playground. You can imagine what kind of prison this was. She was there for years until Emhyr found her and saved her. Their conversation, though, stops when they come across a hut in the middle of the woods with no doors. Francesca is convinced that this is what they've been looking for, but Yennefer warns her, if it's not, we're going to be in big trouble. The hut then rises and shines a light on all three of them, and they're knocked out. When they awake, they're all separated, but yet they're all in the hut, and they're all greeted by the person in the robe from their dream. For Francesca, it's Ithilien. Ithilien explains that the world is going to die in frost and then be reborn. But before that happens, the earth is going to flow with the blood of elves. Francesca asks, how do I stop it? And Ithilien tells her, remove the robe. And when she does that, she's like 6 months pregnant. Ithilien says this will be the first pure-blooded elf born in centuries. And this will be a new hope for a brighter future. Francesca, though, is a little skeptical. She's been pregnant in the past, but she's always had miscarriages. She then questions if the person in front of her is actually Ithilien, and this prophet scoffs at her, saying, your ancestors had more faith. Francesca then asks, okay, what do I have to do? And Ithilien tells her, to make your child live, you must first live amongst men in Cintria, which is Cintra. Now, Fringilla was met by Emhyr, but just like Francesca, Fringilla is a little skeptical on whether this is actually who she thinks it is. He doesn't take offense to it, though. He starts talking about putting her in charge. What would she do? And she says she would strengthen the forces, strengthening the numbers. And he says, even with doing all of that, you're going to need allies. And Fringilla knows that the only people that would ally themselves with Nilfgaard are elves. He whispers in her ear, if you're looking for salvation, you're bringing back the wrong elf. And then finally, with Yennefer, she's visited by a young girl. That's who was under the robe. The prophet starts insulting Yennefer pretty good, and Yennefer tries to play it off like she's not intimidated, but she clearly is. The prophet asks her, you're no longer bound, so why haven't you portaled yourself free? Before Yennefer can even answer, the prophet tells her, you felt it, haven't you? Or I should say, you haven't felt it. And it's true, Yennefer has felt off since she woke up in Fringilla's camp. She's then transported back to the lesson with the flower and the rock, and Yennefer cannot make the rock move, and she gets really upset. It's as if Yennefer has completely lost her magical abilities. All of a sudden, the girl starts morphing into all three, Ithilien, Emhyr, until finally it's settled on an older white woman. She tells Yennefer, I'm going to let you bake some more. I want your desperation crisp. You're going to beg me to take it from you, and I will. She ends up waking up in the middle of the forest, and at this point, the elves are making their way out of the forest, and this includes Fringilla. She tells her that Francesca has said the old guards want an alliance between the elves and Nilfgaard, and she agreed. And Yennefer scoffs at them, then you're both idiots. Fringilla asks Yennefer, what did you ask for? And Yennefer says, an end to all of this. They then say their goodbyes, and now that she's all alone, Yennefer runs through the forest, trying to conjure some magic, but she can't. And she screams in frustration. Now, over with Geralt and Ciri, they arrive at Kaer Morhen, and there's only about 20 Witchers left. They're all led by a guy named Vesemir, who saved most of them when they were kids and trained them all to be Witchers. He's a real father figure to them. They're all really excited to see Geralt. They haven't seen him in years, but they also are pretty surprised when they see Ciri standing right behind him. They all get caught up, though, cracking jokes, laughing, drinking, and that's when the last Witcher shows up, a guy named Eskel. Eskel looks like he has been through the ringer. He's holding a wooden claw, and he tells them that he was in battle for 6 hours, and it was with something called a leshy, which is something that they haven't seen in years. Eskel does explain, though, that while it looked like a leshy and sounded like a leshy, something was different about this one. He, however, is in pain. He got stung by it. His ego gets stung, however, when Vesemir says, to kill a leshy, you have to plunge a flame through its heart. In 6 hours, you didn't think about that? And everyone starts laughing at Eskel's expense, including Ciri. And Eskel doesn't mind when his friends are laughing at him, but he doesn't know who the hell Ciri is. So he walks up and says, who the hell are you? And Ciri, who is a little intimidated, says, Princess Cirilla of Cintra. Everybody kind of gets settled in. Geralt does a little bit of training, but then goes in for some research on that claw. Ciri is with him and is asking, so this is what you guys do? You get healed up and you study how to kill monsters? And he says, yeah, pretty much. She then inquires as to training, and he scoffs at that, saying, no, we're not training. But there's a reason why Ciri wants to train. She says how she wants to kill the man with the black-winged helmet. And Geralt looks at her and says, this is very important. We don't kill for the sake of killing. They kill to save lives. He then hears a commotion outside, and when he goes in the dining area, there's a party going on. And it's not just a party. I mean, there's hookers, there's beer flowing, and it's something that Geralt is disgusted by. He walks up to Vesemir saying, what the hell is this? And Vesemir explains that Eskel brought these women up here. And everyone's so drunk, they're probably not going to remember why they're there. But Geralt definitely does not approve. He walks up to Eskel and says, look, you can do whatever you want outside of here. But in here, you'll have respect for this place. Eskel, who is still in extreme pain, tries to challenge Geralt, tough talk him a bit, even attack him, but it doesn't go well. Geralt is able to avoid any conflict and just tells Eskel, go to bed. But Eskel doesn't go to bed. He goes in a separate room and tries to have sex with one of those prostitutes, but the sting from the Leshy ends up opening up and a root starts popping out of this dude's back. A short while later, everybody hears a big bang going on and all of the Witchers jump into action. They know that there's a problem. And it's Geralt who ends up coming across Eskel, although at first he doesn't know that it's Eskel. But when it comes time to kill the Leshy, that's when he sees that it's actually his friend, and he can't bring himself to do it. Eskel, however, can bring himself to attack Geralt. He ends up tying him up with his roots and even cutting Geralt quite a bit, and Geralt is only saved when Vesemir comes in and throws an axe right at Eskel's back. It distracts Eskel enough, but Eskel now turns his attention to Vesemir, and he ends up choking him out. And it's at that point that Geralt knows the only way to save his mentor is to kill Eskel. So he ends up turning his blade into fire and plunging it through Eskel's heart, killing him. This is disappointing because they didn't want to lose another Witcher, but it's also surprising because they've never seen a Leshy take over a human body before. But there's a first time for everything. All of the Witchers have a ceremony hanging Eskel's medallion with the rest of the fallen Witchers, and Geralt goes, checks on Ciri, but then he takes her outside and he starts training her. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Make sure to be nice in the comment section. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen there, I'll get it up in a few days, not to worry. And I have merchandise, so go buy a mug or something. It's never too early to think about Christmas gifts, folks. Once again, thank you for checking out this recap.